Good morning. On this Saturday morning before Pentecost Day, tomorrow is Pentecost Sunday, we look at 2 Chronicles 21 and 22. And King Jehoshaphat has just died, and my Bible says he slept with his ancestors. What a polite way of saying he died. He slept with his ancestors. And, sometimes we talk about someone that dies, has gone to sleep. And Jesus referred to Lazarus that way, in the New Testament when he received words that Lazarus was sick. He said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but meaning he had died. So anyway, it is just one of the polite ways of saying that. And in today's society, we most often use he passed. And it's, in some ways, it just doesn't seem quite as harsh as he died. That word died is a little bit different. But anyway, Jehoshaphat slept with his ancestors and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. And his son Jehoram succeeded him. And then it lists all of Jehoram's brothers. And that their father had given them many gifts. Jehoshaphat had treated them well and raised them well. And but he gave the kingdom, the kingship to Jehoram because he was the firstborn. And the very first thing happens, verse 4 says, when Jehoram had ascended to the throne and was established, he put all of his brothers to the sword. And, what a horrible thing to do. But this was something that kings often did, was, put all of their brothers or anyone else that might have a claim to the kingship to death that way. And, talking of that, I got an email from YouTube yesterday that my devotion that I put on YouTube last July 27th, talking about the book of Acts, was age restricted. And I haven't listened back to it to see what I did, but maybe I was talked about, death and dying. I don't know. But anyway, it's just kind of strange that here, 11 months later almost, you get that. But anyway, he put all of his brothers to death so that he didn't have to worry about any of them taking over or, having a coup d'etat, so to speak. And it says that he walked in the way of the kings of Israel. And Israel is the kingdom that's not faithful to God. So rather than following his father Jehoshaphat's ways of following God and encouraging the people to follow God, this king Jehoram reestablishes the high places and the altars to the false gods, and yet it says that the Lord did not destroy the house of David because of his promise to David and to that. So even though this king is like this king of Judah who the country has been faithful, now is being led by a king who is not faithful. And we read just a little snippet about this king in 2 Kings, just about 2 or 3 verses. It says he did evil in the sight of the Lord and la-di-da. But during this time, Edom revolted against the city, and Jehoram crossed over with his armies and stuff. And so there was, when these other countries saw that this king was no longer following God, they put 2 and 2 together, and, God won't be protecting them. We don't have to worry about the God of Israel striking our armies down that way. But Jehoram's rule didn't last very long, only a year. But, he got a letter from Elijah. And again, we haven't really heard about Elijah much here lately at all. But he gets a letter from Elijah, saying, thus says the Lord God, the prophet speaking for God, because you have not walked in the way of your father, this is, in some ways it's a warning, but in other ways it's the judgment of God is coming upon you. And because of this, the Lord will bring a great plague upon you and your people and your children, your wives, and you will get this disease. And the horrible thing, it says of your bowels until your bowels come out of your body. You know, he's going to be so sick that, you know, I mean, what kind of disease is this of his intestines? That's what, you know, and, you know, some kind of cancer, we would call it today. And then in verse 16, the Lord aroused against Jehoram the anger of the Philistines and the Arabs. And they came up against Judah and raided and took possession of much stuff that way. And then you know, from 18 on to the end, the Lord struck him with his disease. And you know, it says that he was 32 when he began his reign. He reigned for 8 years. And then the sad part, he departed with no one's regret. And what an epitaph to have on your tombstone. No one regrets that you died. No one will miss you. They rejoiced and they sang glad songs when you died, when you slept with the kings. But, you know, I mean, it's a sad thing that this son of a man who had done so much good and was so, you know, well liked and honored by the people, the son is just, you know, the opposite, and no regrets when he died. What a horrible thing to say. You know, they buried him in the city of David, but not in the tomb of the kings. So I mean, they didn't honor him that way either. You know, he was buried, but not in the tomb of the kings, and there wasn't any. There was no time of mourning or anything that way. They didn't burn sacrifices or offer sacrifices or any of that stuff. And then in chapter 22, there's a little bit of an error here, because it says that this Jehoram's son, Azariah, succeeds him as king. And he was 42 when he became king. And I read that and I thought, but Jehoram was only 40 when he died, and how could his son be 42 when he takes, you know, well, if you look back to Kings, Azariah was 22. So it's the writer of Chronicles, you know, wrote something down wrong, or somewhere along the line, one of the scribes made a mistake, and, you know, it hasn't been corrected. And why they don't correct it, I mean, it's just strange. I mean, they know that there's a mistake, and but, you know, fix it. You know, I mean, if you make a mistake in your life, what do? You try to correct it. You try to make it right that way. But anyway, you know, it says he was 42. He wasn't. He was only 22, and he reigned 1 year. Think about that. 1 year that this new king reigned, Azariah. No, Ahaziah, whatever his name is. But he reigned 1 year. And he did, again, it says he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And again, you can find, you know, just a couple verses about this king in 2 Kings, or in 1 Kings as well. No, 2 Kings, I think it was. But there's not much about him. But verse 7 is a very telling verse. It was ordained by God that the downfall of Ahaziah should come about through his going to visit Joram. And it was ordained by God. Think about that. You know, in today's society, you know, a lot of people say, you know, God's plan is this for me. I wonder what God's plan for my life is. And I mean, to me, God's plan, God's hope for each and every one of us is that we have a fulfilling life, you know, and happy, have friends, have family, you know, be content with who we are. You know, but I don't know that God's plan for me was that I was going to do this and this and this, and then at age 51 I was going to be ordained. I don't know that God had that all scripted out and written out. You know, there's a lot of what happens in the world happens because of what's going on in the world and everything that way. But anyway, you know, here it says it was ordained by God that the downfall of this king would be that way. And as I've said before, I mean, in these early years of Israel and everything, we see God much more active with the people, in visions, in prophets, in all of those things speaking. And somewhere along the line that changed. You know, about 400 years before Jesus was born, you know, all of a sudden we don't read so much about God's interactivity with the people until the coming of Jesus. And then with the coming of Jesus, the greatest prophet of all times, that way, the Son of God himself, people still didn't listen, But anyway, so this Ahaziah was only there for 1 year. He was king, and then it says that they buried him because he was the grandson of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all of his heart, even though Jehoshaphat's son didn't and this grandson didn't. They buried him, and as the house of Ahaziah had no one left to rule over the kingdom, so Alethea, this last king's mother, takes the reign and becomes, rather than a king of Israel, she's the queen. She rules, and it says that she was going to destroy all of the other killed children, that would be possibly coming up to be kings, and just like Jehoram had killed all of his brothers, so there wasn't anybody to worry about. This woman decided she's going to kill all of the babies, infants, children, so that there wouldn't be anyone that would have claim to the throne. But there was one, but the king's daughter, Jehoshaphat, took Joash, who was the son of Ahaziah, and hid him away for 6 years with the priests, and took care of him that way hid him for 6 years, so that this Elizabeth, this evil and wicked queen, wouldn't be able to find him and put him to death either. And so that, it ends, our reading ends today with this child who remains hidden for 6 years, hidden in the house of God, while Alethea reigned over the land. And again, she was not a faithful or a good leader. So we come into looking tomorrow. It's Pentecost Sunday, as I said. It's the first Sunday of the month. We'll have communion at Mabel tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock worship. You're welcome to tune us in. You're welcome to come visit us if you'd like. And as always, if you're at home not able to go to worship, you're welcome to have elements for communion at your table, bread and wine, crackers, whichever, and join us that way. So God's blessing to you this day as always.